In today's episode, I talk with Ed about Buddhism, meditation, and authentic relating. We talk about the 9 stages of meditation, the elephant path, an ancient Buddhist roadmap that helps develop concentration, presence, and attentional control, and how reclaiming trust through your body by becoming aware of where the sensations live. Welcome to Man Quest Define Meaning, where we help men navigate modern life, find their true purpose, and redefine manhood. I'm your host, James, and each week, inspiring guests share their journeys of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and finding success. From experts to everyday heroes, get practical advice and powerful insights. Struggling with career, relationships, or personal growth? We've got you covered. Join us on Man Quest Define Meaning. Now, let's dive in. Our inherent nature is that we are loving kindness. Good afternoon, Ed. Can you tell me more?
Yeah, good afternoon, James. Yeah, it's something that's been very true for me on this path of deep study into Indo-Tibetan practices, where our kind of nature, our inherent nature is love. It is compassion. It's this kindness. And within Buddhist practices, it's really awakening you to your true nature. And that is with love, really.
So let's start there. Let's start with the Buddhist practices. Because obviously, the reason I know Ed is because we did a authentic relating course about a month ago, and I think something that you did mention a bit about some Buddhist practices then, and also when we had a chat. Let's start there because you mentioned that you're a specific type of Buddhism.
So I'm with a school which the lineage is within Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana is the universal vehicle. And previous to that, you had a lineage, the Hinayana, which is the individual vehicle in terms of how does the individual reach enlightenment. Ana is more the group, more community. And these practices, I've been interested in Buddhism for a long time, but the kind of last 5 years, I've been deeply into these practices through a school that I'm studying with called Planetary Dharma. And it merges these Indo-Tibetan teachings from the Mahayana lineage, the Mahayana school of thought, with Western contemplative psychology. So merging that with Jungian psychology, human development, integral. So the link between what we did with authentic relating, if I think the originator of authentic relating was part of integral psychology, the Integral Institute, which was set up by a incredibly intelligent man, Ken Wilber. And the school that I'm part of, our teacher set up Integral Institute with Ken Wilber. So there's this kind of beautiful synchronicity in teachings there. And integral psychology really is kind of, Ken Wilber looked at all of these different theories, not just Western, but also Eastern, and looked for a lot of common themes within there and was able to merge all of these, piece these all together as you would piece together a puzzle. And within that, looking at, as human beings, how do we develop? And there's stages of development that is recognizable within many different schools of thought. And so my school brings in the Indo-Tibetan practices with the recognition of how we are developing as human beings, the life path that we have, and the psychological tools that we can use to self-reflect and to essentially coach ourselves along this path. And it's this journey. It speaks about the journey of the individuation, the merging of the unification of our unconscious and our subconscious. And these teachings, there's so many synchronicities within them, and they're incredibly powerful. And that's where, yeah, how I came to authentic relating was because one of my fellow students, he's been fully into the authentic relating piece, and he said, "Hey, authentic relating, the style of communication fits really well with what we've been learning about how it's about being really present." And so we've been doing all these practices that really ground us in presence. But then here was a piece that was about how we communicate from that place of presence. And of course, it fits really well because authentic relating comes from an integral. Our school has a branch from integral, so it fits, it just merges beautifully, which is how I ended up being on the same course as you.
Going on to that, what are some of the common themes that you see from the Buddhist and also the integral psychology?
So that's a really good question. It's recognizing that there is this journey that we all go on. And this journey is within Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey. And this journey of individuation whereby we set out on this path, and within Buddhism, there's a teaching. It's known as the 9 stages of Maitreya, also known as the elephant path, and it's about how you apply certain tools and techniques within meditation along this 9-stage path that takes you to the path to enlightenment, essentially. And it's also known as the path of the Bodhisattva. And it's known as the path of the Bodhisattva because bodhisattvas, whether you believe in this or not, bodhisattvas are awakened beings who they master this path to enlightenment, become enlightened, but they choose to reincarnate. They choose to come back down this path to then teach others. Whereas within Buddhism, if you reach enlightenment, you move on to nirvana and you don't come back. Like you've game over, you've completed it. You're not coming back into this world. Now, whether that's true or not doesn't matter. What's relevant is that the Bodhisattva path is you gain enlightenment, and which is the kind of release from all suffering. And then you come back and you teach people how to do that. And so how that relates to integral is that there are these stages of development that consciousness moves through, and that we are all participating in this evolution of consciousness. And as more and more people are drawn into these practices and are developing techniques that expand their consciousness, that then helps draw up the consciousness of the planet, which is a good thing.
Yeah. So just to clarify, the Buddhist, as they become enlightened, they go on to, is it nirvana, you said?
Yes. Yeah.
I just wanted to interrupt the podcast to talk about something that I'm super excited about running next year. So on January the 10th, I'm hosting a 1-day Dragon Energy immersion at a place called Eton Manor in Shropshire in the UK. It'll be a 6-hour retreat where you'll connect to your inner dragon, use movement to release blocks, create from your subconscious, and I'll be teaching you some self-healing tools that you can use to start to change your life. So if you're feeling stuck, drained, overwhelmed, or disconnected from your power, then this retreat is for you, and it will help to reset for 2026. If you feel called to the dragon energy, then DM me the word dragon either on Instagram, Facebook, and I'll send you further details. So I'm going to put all the links to my socials in the info section for this podcast and for others. So now let's carry on with the podcast. And then the integral psychology, or the Buddhist that you follow, but the Buddhism that you follow, basically you help others to become enlightened at a certain stage.
Absolutely. So within the whole of Buddhism, that there are bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas are these awakened beings used in that's the kind of translation for it. But I think enlightened can be quite triggering for people. But it's a practice that helps you reach this level of awareness whereby you're out of this perpetual cycle of suffering, and then you teach others how to do that. That's within Buddhism across all realms, but it's this understanding that these practices help you develop your level of consciousness. And with integral as well is looking at all of these different practices that expand your level of consciousness on an individual level, but then on a collective as well, from a society, a culture, a universal kind of consciousness shift.
What type of practices do they include?
Yeah, so we spent a long time on this 9 stages of calm staying, which essentially is, this is a foundational practice, which is learning how to calm your mind. And there's elements of mindfulness in terms of really it's gaining control of our attention. We live in a world whereby we are so distracted, and social media companies, life is just so many entities are competing for our attention, right? Where are we spending our time watching things? Where are we spending our time? Where are we spending our money? There's just this competition. And so our minds are drawn all over the place all of the time. And so this path, the 9 stages of Maitreya, the initial stages are about learning how to regain control of our mind and direct it back to, so it's a concentration practice. So very early beginnings is a concentration practice. So recognizing when you get distracted and then returning to a meditation object. And most meditations use the breath as a meditation object. So the meditation object is what you always come back to. Recognize you're distracted, come back to the meditation object. Within our school, we use the ground as the meditation object because the ground is stable, it's solid, it's always there. And whereas the breath is very transient. So we set up our meditation anytime we recognize we're distracted. And within a meditation, you can be distracted by thinking. You can be distracted by sound, by sensations in the body. And whatever it is that distracts you, you recognize it and you come back. The way that you would bring a puppy back into the space that you want the puppy to be, and you don't want the puppy wandering off and going in, making a mess in the corner of the room, and say, hey, puppy, you're staying here. And you just lovingly bring your attention back to the meditation object, which is the ground. So we spend a lot of time working with the ground. And then there are ways within, once you've developed a level of proficiency of control over your attentional system. And it's not, I think that a misconception of meditation is that you're completely clearing your mind. That's a misconception. This is about being able to recognize you've been distracted, come back. Every time that happens, you continually come back. And what the skill is, then you get faster at doing that. So fast that as soon as something arises, you've been able to recognize the very first impulse of a sensation that you're able to come back. Whereas what happens in the untrained mind is that we get stuck. A sensation may come up, for example, a sore shoulder, and then I start analyzing the pain, and then I start creating a story around that pain. My shoulder's sore because, my posture's bad, or I've been sitting here for a long time, and we get wound up in story. And the untrained mind gets caught up in that story, and before you know it, been a minute or two and you're like, oh, geez, I'm trying to meditate here. Come back to ground. The skilled mind recognizes that first sensation and then is able to come back before getting stuck in the story.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think as well, though, it's more... So from my own perspective of meditation, I've had a on and off kind of relationship for a long time. But it's more like if I feel a sensation in the body, rather than giving it a story, which I might do initially, I then turn my focus or attention into that sensation. And generally, within a few seconds or minutes, that sensation disappears. And then on to the next. So in fact, that's like a meditation in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that comes onto a later stage in this pathway whereby we would call that attuning. So we attune to what arises within our body because, and you'll be able to relate to this, most of the times when we have something uncomfortable come up within our body, a sensation that that within Buddhism, there's 3 types of sensation. There's positive sensation, negative sensation, and neutral. And we tend to want more of the positive sensations. Oh, that feels good. We don't like the negative ones, and we try to push those away. And then neutral, we don't know about them. We're not fussed. As humans, we're very good at pushing away what we're feeling. And the ability to actually be with what's arising is incredibly healing. And so to move on from what you've just described, in our practice, we would attend to what's arising within our body on a physical level. We would attend to it the way that a loving parent would attend to a child in discomfort, right? So there's an element of care. So this pain arises in my shoulder. Like you, I'm attending, I bring my attention into it, but then I'm adding the piece of I'm lovingly being aware of this, and there's a lot of softening that happens with it. And then the next one that arises, do the same thing. And so there's an intentional piece behind that attunement. And when you feel into your body this way, you're giving yourself permission to feel. And society, and men in particular as well, we're not very good at feeling our emotions. And so the deeper layer to that is when emotions start coming up, if you go deep enough with your awareness, you will find that there are areas within your body where sadness lives, where grief lives, where anger lives. And these are all emotions that oftentimes we've learned not to express them because it's been deemed as being inappropriate.
Yeah.
And so we push these emotions down, we store them in our body. But within this meditation piece, if you can lovingly bring your attention to these areas within your body and be the archetypal perfect parent, surrounding that area with love, being truly present with it, that begins a healing process.
Yeah. Okay. So just to quickly go back, you jumped a little bit there. With regards to the meditation, so what you're saying there is that for somebody who's perhaps listening, they can find something they can focus on, whether that's the breath or whether that's the ground, and start by just breathing and moving their attention within. And when they realize there's a distraction, such as a thought or a feeling, bring themselves back to what they initially started with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for a beginner, you're sitting in meditation, you choose your posture, whether you're sitting cross-legged on the ground or whether you're sitting in a chair, it doesn't matter. It's about comfort. Whatever you choose your meditation to be, whether it's the feeling of the stability of the seat and of the ground beneath you, or whether it's the movement of the breath, it's helpful to label your experience. So if you recognize, you hear something that's distracted you and you're like, oh, what's that sound? You can label it as sound. And that labeling of sound, you can then come back to return to meditation object. If there's a feeling in your body that pops up and it's an achy shoulder, you can go, sensation, label it as sensation, and then return back to your meditation object. Just as if you get caught up in thinking, as soon as you recognize that you're caught up in thinking, label it, I'm thinking, return back to the meditation object. And you just continually go through that process for however long you set your meditation up for. 5 minutes is incredibly powerful. Do that for 5 minutes and you're developing the power of concentration. So you're reclaiming your attention, which is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Okay. So what other practices within the 9 stages, what other practices or did you actually start to do?
Yeah. So we develop the concentration power by returning to ground, which brings a bit of stillness within the body and the experience. We then bring in the attuning piece, which is that being with what's arising. Then we work with the skill of being able to increase your interest. So along this path, it's a 1,000-year-old teaching. And along this path, there's in the drawing there, these kind of big fires that have been painted. And the fire replicates or depicts motivation. And as people do more meditation, sometimes you get bored, right? Or you lose interest. So the fire depicts desire to focus in on what you're doing. So one of the skills is becoming more interested in what you're doing. So whether that's the attuning piece, you're being with the sensation that rises in your body, it's increasing your interest in that sensation. And what that would look like, an analogy for that would be if you were at a gallery and you were looking at a really beautiful painting, increasing your interest is getting right up close to this painting and you're looking at every little detail of what's there. So that's a skill. And it's something that we can relate to in terms of if we're doing something in life if we're watching a match of football, we can become so interested in that football match that we lose concepts of time, of space, of what's going on outside of the football match. In meditation, we can use that within the meditation. So we increase our interest, which is a really powerful skill. And again, this path is the path of learning as well. When you're learning a new skill, it's important to become really interested in the skill that you're trying to learn. So really becoming your attention focusing on, I've been learning to play the guitar. So really dialing in my attention into the movements of my fingers, for example. So we apply an increase in desire, like my desire to learn this, my desire to be with the sensation that's arising. And that provides more energy because we're trying to increase the energy within the meditation, because what can happen, and again, if people who are new to this or they've been doing it for a long time, when you meditate, sometimes you get a little bit dull. You can get bored. You can get a little bit sleepy. And so increasing the interest brightens up the experience within your mind. It gives you a little bit more, it gives you a little caffeine boost. And so that's one of the other little skills that we use, increase the interest. Then we dial in our interest even more. So we come into, and part of this is visualization as well, but we come into the breath of the heart. So when we're breathing, we connect to the movement within our chests, and that just helps. We're just going deeper and deeper into our experience. So breathing in, feeling the heart expanding out sideways, breathing in, feeling the heart expanding down into the depths, rising up as we breathe in, moving forward as we breathe in, and the heart expanding backwards as we breathe in. So we breathe, we feel these dimensions within our chest, because on a physical level, as we breathe in, if you're the breath expands your chest cavity in 360 degrees, up and down as well, right?
Yeah.
So we dialing in our attention into these movements, which again is giving us more and more energy. So we're really increasing our focus, and we then shift up a gear of increased focus when we go to the nostrils. So we move from the breath at the chest, we move to the nostrils, and we get even closer to the finer sensations of the breath as it moves in and out of the nostrils. And again, this is just building energy for us, because then what happens is we can then release everything. And because the analogy is you use all this rocket fuel to get you out of Earth's atmosphere, and then you switch off the rocket fuel and you're in space and you're gliding. And so there are these really finely tuned skills to get to this point where we can relax, and we can relax into this vast open space of calm, of awareness. And our mind just comes to being completely still.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of relates. So what I've been doing recently, I've been doing this course, and part of the course is actually doing the shaker meditation. And initially the shaker meditation, you think, okay, I'm just doing it for the hell of doing it. But what I've noticed recently is that within the shaking, there's periods of time of maybe 30 seconds to a minute where I'm literally almost focused in at, I've found a spot which is quite tight, and I'm moving that spot, trying to shake that spot out. And I'm in the body. I can sense all the feelings. I can feel the sensations, and you almost lose track of time. The last 2 times I've done it, there's been a time of where I've literally just like, where's the time gone?
Yeah, it's so powerful when you give yourself permission to actually feel into your body, to feel what's there, because there is so much that we've repressed, that we've not allowed. And it's that in that not allowing that brings on, you do that for long enough and you start experiencing chronic illness, right? Mental health issues, physical issues. So the actual kind of the gift of, there's many ways that you can, there's many different ways to meditate, right? And there's different ways to do somatic practices like body work. But it's that intentionality with what you're talking about in terms of, okay, we're going to liven things up by shaking. And then with our mind, come into our body and be truly present with the sensations, not going into story. It's how can you be with what's arising and actually be okay with that as well, because part of the human condition is not accepting what is, right? Like we want things to be different.
Yeah.
There's this continual battle of, oh, I want more money, or I want to live in a better house, or I want to, whatever it is that we feel that externally we need more of or less of. I don't want to feel bored. The things that we push away. I don't like being when I'm not doing anything, right? People find it very difficult to sit and be still. But it's this constant pushing away or trying to grab that creates the suffering. But if you can learn to be with what's arising, as you're talking about in terms of these somatic practices, you're allowing all of these pent-up emotions and sensations just to bubble to the surface. And that's very healing.
Yeah. Yesterday, I felt quite off weather. And what I've noticed this year especially is there's so much potent energy, especially with what's been going on in regards to the planets and stuff and eclipses. There's so much potent energy at this moment in time. And I've never, ever felt such big shifts like I have this year. And it's almost like this year I'm continually releasing. And the way my body releases is I tend to be under the weather. And last night I was just saying to myself, do you know what? I'm going to go to bed early. I'm going to I'm very attuned to dragon energy, fire.
And
Okay.
so I said to myself, I'm going to use dragon energy, fire, to help, to heal, to release. And I'm going to allow myself, just my body, to do what it needs to do. And this morning I felt fine. I felt really good. And you're right. There is so much potent stuff inside us that we are always looking on the outside of the houses, the cars, the money, everything. But it's more the fact that if our internal state almost creates our external state. If you've got all these repressed emotions, all these limiting beliefs, all these ancestral patterns down the lineage, such as money doesn't grow on trees, and all these different things. But if you don't allow yourself to feel and allow yourself to release these, you're not going to change them. So I feel like you're almost creating this continual cycle of what you've created is what you're going to be keeping until you allow yourself to go into your body and to feel whatever sensation needs to be felt.
Absolutely, James. And there's so much in what you've just said that you can go into. If I speak to what you said about you feel that at this year you've just been releasing so much. I think one of the things that puts a lot of people off from actually doing this inner work is that it is uncomfortable, because you are dredging the bottom of the ocean, right? You're dredging up these past wounds, past traumas. And it's not to say that it's part of the healing, you have to relive those, but it's being present to that energy that's within those repressed emotions, wounds. And just from a Buddhist perspective, we're born with, so Buddhists talk about multi-generational trauma. So there's a recognition that when we are born into this life, the first trauma that you and I experience is the trauma of being separated from mother. So we're born, we come out of the womb, the cord is cut. That is traumatic. That's the first kind of trauma that I experience in this world. And we all go through that. But that doesn't mean to say that doesn't affect us on a really deep psychological unconscious level. Then you have everything that I experience in life will affect me, whatever your life experiences are. And we all have different journeys in this lifetime, but whether it's a father leaving home early or the loss of a primary caregiver at an early age, all of that comes into our experience. And that's just my lifetime. I'm 44 now, and there's lots of low points in my life that I've had to process. And early on, I didn't process them well. We're not resourced enough to do that. But then there's also within Buddhism, there's the recognition of our ancestral line of trauma that gets passed on. So the stories that aren't told. I love this thing about biology in that when my grandmother would have been pregnant with my mother, would have had all of her eggs in her. So the egg that made me was inside my grandmother at some point, right? And so whatever my grandmother was experiencing, my mom was born in 1952, so we're post-war, all of the traumatic events in my grandmother's life, I would have been experiencing that in her body. My cells would have experienced that in her body. And that's so we know from epigenetics that this is true. But then there's further back the ancestral line of the trauma that gets passed on from one generation to the next. Then there's the trauma of the society that we're born into. And this cycle of suffering, this multi-generational trauma perpetuates itself. And we don't need to look very far in the world to see where that's true. If we look at what's going on in Israel and Palestine, the war that's going on now has been going on for thousands of years, right? This isn't a new thing that popped up. This goes back many generations. And so these cycles repeat themselves. They repeat themselves on an individual level. My own healing has been to recognize these kind of themes that have been causing me to suffer. They continually come up until I recognize what my role is within them and go, actually, do you know what? I need to look at this in a different way. I need to work with this. That's part of my own healing. But to bring that into this, there's so much generational trauma that is within us that we can constantly release. When you've done releasing yourself, there's all your ancestors to release for. And the beauty of this healing work is that the healing work that you do on yourself, you're doing that for everyone who came before you and for everyone who's going to come after you as well.
Yeah. Steen, when you said about what my aha moment was that you said about at birth, we are separated from our mother and it's cervical's cut, isn't it? It just clicked to me that we talk about always being connected. We're actually connected beings. We connect to everything. We are one with everything. But maybe that realization, let's be a realization that maybe the reason that we feel separated is because we had that cervical cut. So suddenly we've gone from being connected to our mother, inside our mother, to being completely separate. And so there's that trauma.
Absolutely.
So maybe there's that sense, that realization that in order to heal that separation, we need to go and allow ourselves to go into our body, to feel that moment when we were separated, but at the same time, allowing our ancestral separation to come in at the same time.
Absolutely. And there's two levels to this separation. There's the split from our mother at birth, and so it's the umbilical cord. I lost the name for it. Yeah, they cut the umbilical cord.
Yeah.
So we got that trauma, but then also look deeper in terms of if we within these spiritual traditions, and it's the earth is viewed as Mother Earth, and we are so split off today from Mother Earth, the planet, more so than we ever have been. We're waging war against our planet with the way that we fish, the way that we farm, the way that we just knock down forests to whatever. There's a split from a planetary perspective. There's that healing to go to deal with as well, which is huge.
Yeah, there's that idea that we need, in order to really step into this, we need to connect ourselves back to Mother Nature. We need to connect ourselves back to the soil, come back to the traditional ways and means in which we can really connect to that side of ourselves, and to be able to explore the old traditions, such as the old tribes. Also, I feel like we're at a point now where we are able to, there's so many different modalities out there, so many different things which you can connect deeply with. We need to start to be able to connect through other means and ways in which we can new ways. We can start to channel new ways of connecting to the earth, new ways of connecting to other people. Yeah, I feel like there's a sense of old, but also a sense of new.
Absolutely. And I can link what you've just said there really beautifully with with integral psychology. There's this, they look at spiral dynamics, or essentially it's how civilizations have evolved over time. And within what you've just said, in terms of these tribal practices that were done with the shaman, and how very magical type thinking, spiritual worlds, and these different realms, that was the level of consciousness at that time. Integral and spiral dynamics look at how what should happen is that we, at that level, we then transcend that, but we include the previous level, if that makes sense. So as we've evolved and we've come a long way from our hunter-gatherer, early tribal relatives, ancestors, but as we've developed, what we've done as a society now, we've shunned all of that. We've gone, no, that's not appropriate. So we've neglected that. Whereas what you're talking about is to actually bring those practices in, include them into this time, but then it's also transcend them.
Yes.
But it's transcending from a wholesome place as opposed to we've kicked that out because it's all rubbish or we're better than that. But actually, it's a very deep part of who we actually are, but we just ignored it.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about is this, integrating it and transcending it.
Yeah. There's a level of having this humility that using our body's truth and intelligence to help us to integrate the old traditions. So, yes, the shamans in the rainforests, the Aborigines in Australia, and the tribes in Africa, and to utilize a deeper sense of connecting to other dimensions so that we can create this whole new way of living peacefully with ourselves, with everybody else, with the earth, and with the collective consciousness.
Absolutely. And it's, you can see that there's people are so much more interested today in these older practices. In the West, we're becoming very interested in mindfulness meditation and yoga practices, but in the West, we're very good at taking a thread out of the whole tapestry. So we take out the yoga postures out of the lifestyle of yoga. We take out the mindfulness meditation outside of the kind of lineage of Buddhist practice. But these are good ways for us to get in. The school that I'm in is talking about a lot of these Buddhist practices they're a couple thousand years old, and they were relevant for the time when monks could go off and meditate in a cave for 10 years and then come back again as this enlightened being. It's how do we make these teachings relevant to where we are today and the challenges that we face as individuals, as a collective? How can we make those teachings relevant into essentially bringing about a humanity that is recognizing that we can't keep going on the path that we're going on? There's a lot of healing work that needs to be done. And the planet, we need to heal the planet because the planet's angry. It's bringing in these practices, as you're talking about, bringing in the old. How can we integrate them into today and what works for today? And then lifting up from there.
Yeah. So it's things done quite nicely because obviously in order for us to really connect to our body's intelligence, our body's truth, there's got to be a level of trust. We've got to have trust in our own body and on our own sensations and what we're told and our own intuition. And it was almost at this moment in time, I feel like there's a lot of people who project their trust out into the world. There's a lot of people that don't trust what's going on because they've been lied to. And so this kind of, for me, it just indicates that there's a lack of trust in ourselves, and myself included. This month, for me, it's about working on trusting myself more. And but in order to really begin to trust ourselves, how can we start to build that trust? How can we start to build that trust in our bodies?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's from my perspective, and this is something that we've been working on within our school is, so one of the reasons why we use the ground as our meditation object is that the first level is the ground is stable, right? Like when I recognize my mind's distracted, I can come back to the stability that's beneath me. And it's outside of me, right? So we create a relationship between my experience and this experience of solid ground. And I keep reminding myself in this meditation that the ground is stable. But then I go deeper into that. So the physical level is stability, it's solid. The emotional level to that, which is deeper, is that the ground is supporting me. I feel supported. I feel held. That allows for a sense of safety to arise within my experience.
Yeah.
That allows, the more safe I can feel, safety or trust has got to do with safety. If I feel safe in your presence, trust arises.
Yeah.
So in the meditation, when I'm relating to the ground stable, ground is safe, this is trustworthy. The more that you go on the meditation path, you start investigating the boundary between my body and the felt sense of ground. And this comes into a more advanced technique in meditation, which is called emptiness practice. But with my mind, with my eyes closed, I can feel the boundary. I can feel my body, and I can feel the hard seat beneath me, or I can feel my body weight on the ground and my feet on the ground. But with interest, like I mentioned before, if I get really close within my mind to those felt sensations, where's that boundary? Can I find the boundary in my mind? I can feel the sensation of boundary, but where is this hard wall? And in my direct experience, the more that I examine that, I can see that the ground is open. And by open, what I mean is that in my direct experience of mind, there is no hard boundary. And because of it, from a psychological perspective, the stability that I feel outside of me is actually a construct of my mind. The stability is within me. So once you recognize that this boundary actually doesn't exist between me and the ground, that actually stability that was beneath me is actually also within me, then that safety as well, the safety from relating to the ground, that safety is within inside of me. And the more you do that, you create this sense of safety and trust within your body. And that's just from a meditation perspective. I think, that's you need to be meditating for a while to be able to experience that. But from a day-to-day perspective, coming back to your point in terms of how do we trust, you made the point that we externalize everything, right? So if we look at COVID, for example, we were looking at the scientists. The scientists, we trust the science. It's like, what about my own intuition? And I'm not going to go into the details of the COVID stuff, but it's like even on a day-to-day basis, we wear heart rate monitors to measure how hard our heart rate's going. We wear devices that tell us how well we're sleeping. And I've had so many conversations with friends and clients who they track their sleeping, and they'll come to me, they'll say, oh, do you know, my data last night says I slept really well. I got 8.5 hours sleep and I hit this level of sleep for that amount of time. And it gave me a score of kind of 9.5 out of 10. I don't wear wearables. I'm making this part up. But I go, how do you feel? And they go, I wake up feeling like shit. What does that tell you about your sleep then? Because for me, if you're sleeping well, you're waking up rested, replenished, ready to go, not needing to reach for a coffee.
Yeah.
I have a device telling me that I've slept well, but my body is telling me that's a lie. That's not true. And so we've outsourced that. We're no longer listening to our bodies. So in terms of how do I trust my body, start listening to it. Start listening to that. There's a reason why you're having 3 or 4 coffees before lunchtime. You're sleep's off. You're not sleeping well.
Yeah.
You're probably on your laptop until late, which means that you're not sleeping well, which means you're waking up feeling tired, needing coffee. So it's listening to your body, because our body is so intelligent and we've just been shutting off. I think in terms of you're like how you relate to fire, and very much the kind of opposing the opposing opposites of yin and yang and night and day, fire and water, the masculine, the feminine. We're very good at pushing. We're very good at burning up energy. Go. How much can I move in the gym? Then it's like push into the productivity at work. Push, 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 push. We're pushing later on into that. We're pushing when we wake up. It's go for my run. Go to the gym at lunchtime. Go to the gym after work. We push, push. And we spend more of our fire, but then we're not resting, recovering. We're out of balance. Too much fire and not enough water, not enough of the kind of feminine, too much masculine, not enough feminine.
What I've come to realize with fire is that we see fire as masculine, but actually fire is both masculine and feminine. It's fire and it's also water. I think it's everything. I use fire to heal, to release. I can use fire to, if I need different areas. But just going back quickly, there's a few things I was thinking of as you're talking about trusting more. And a few things that I've noticed myself is that when I write a list of things to do in my diary, which aren't loads, I have a list of things that I want to get done by the end of the week. And I also have a list of things I want to get done by the day. If you've got too many things on your list saying that you're done today, what are you saying to yourself? You're saying to yourself that there's a lack of trust in getting those things done. You're saying to yourself that I can get these things done, but actually, if you don't get any of them things done, you're saying, I don't trust that I can get these things done.
Absolutely. The other one, what comes up when you say that is the night before you tell yourself you're going to wake up at 6 a.m., but then you snooze until 6:45. You're breaking trust the moment that you wake up. So I think what we're bringing together here is there's this element of learning to listen to your body and actually connecting with yourself more, but then also what actions throughout the day are causing you to either build trust or mistrust, because our actions, our boundaries and the little promises that we make to ourselves are all part of that.
Yeah. We've only covered like a quarter of what I wanted to speak about, literally. We've had a long conversation, haven't we? So what I'll do, Ed, if it's okay with you, is to get yourself back on for another episode in perhaps a couple of months' time.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds good.
Yeah,
I'd love just on that trust piece. Can I add something to the trust piece? So with that trust, your ability to trust somebody else is only as strong as you are able to trust yourself. So if you want to have more trusting relationships, the first relationship that you need to work on is that trusting relationship with yourself. And the deeper level of trust you can build within yourself, that's going to then, the knock-on effect to your relationships is huge, which comes back to the authentic relating part.
Yeah. Is that the idea that we're duality, so we're trust and we're also mistrust. But I find that if I say, I've started to learn that, okay, where in my body do I feel trust? And I instantly have this sensation just below my rib cage, just below the last bone. Is it bone? My rib cage? It feels like it's there.
Yeah, your rib.
Yeah. So then it's about, okay, what does it need? Or can I focus my attention, like meditation? Can I focus my attention into that spot to build? And then over time, gradually, as you focus more on the trust, you'll be able to have more trust in yourself, I feel. But also, it also creates that sensation, that trust in our body to know where these sensations are. So where do I feel safe in my body right now? And that, for me, that's my left hand below my throat, left hand side of my clavicle, I think it is. Yeah. And so just being able to pinpoint where these sensations are and sitting with them sensations, I feel like we're creating trust in the body.
Absolutely. And I think on that point, it's trust the first thing that comes up, because our mind will then second guess it, right?
Yeah.
I think it's trust the inherent wisdom within your body, that when you ask that question, the first thing that comes up, go with that. Trust that. Rather than, is it that? What about this face over here? Which we're very good at. We're very good at second guessing and overanalyzing. Trust that inherent.
Trust that inherent thing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ed. That's been absolutely awesome. It's obviously I want to get you back on because we can have such an in-depth conversation on authentic relating and injury.
Absolutely.
But for now, we'll leave it for now. And so, how can people get in contact with you, and what do you offer?
Yeah, so people can follow me on Instagram. It's Ed Barry Coach. So EDBARRY, then Coach. And at the moment, I'm only offering things locally. I'm based in Norwich and I work as an osteopath. I specialize in rehabilitation. So I'm doing a lot of face-to-face work, but I will be offering online meditation and online coaching soon as well. The best place to follow me is on Instagram, and then you'll keep up to date with my offerings.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, James, I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for tuning in to Man, A Quest to Find Meaning. If today's conversation sparked something in you, take a moment to reflect, then take a step. Remember, real growth comes from action, not just insight. If you found value in this episode, share it with a friend, leave a review, or reach out and let me know what resonated. Your feedback helps shape the journey we're on together. For more conversations like this, make sure to subscribe and stay connected. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn for updates, tools, and upcoming guests. Remember, it's not about having the answers, it's about daring to look.